been a bit of a tricky one for me to narrate because well, not so much to narrate, rather to edit. The battle's going on slightly longer than I thought. I do pause a lot and look around, especially on bitty battles like this, because there are troops displaced all over the place. You'll notice at some point as well during this battle that his infantry has placed chevaux de frise, which are basically spikes, wooden spikes, and you just see them to the right of the picture there now, that stick out the ground both ways towards your cavalry and towards his own infantry. So in other words, these are lethal whether you attack them from the front or the back. If you run your cavalry over them without even realising that they're there, you know, just by targeting the enemy and charging at them, then they could run over the chevaux de frise. You could lose up to half your cavalry. I've seen whole units rout because they've been asked to charge over chevaux de frise, and they've got there lined up the spikes there with dead horses. The horses have just run away. You have to be careful there. His artillery is sighted in a kind of I don't know how you call it. No, it's probably what would you call them? Some kind of escutcheon, really. They're most likely to be sort of the woven basket filled, sort of, you know, full of earthworks, you know, to protect his artillery from infantry fire, which means that you tend to have to storm them, you know, rather than fire at them. At this point in the game, he hasn't got grape shot, so the artillery aren't quite as lethal close up. So you could get quite close up to them and just volley them away, but unfortunately, you know, while they're in such earthworks, it's difficult to do that. I think it's gabion was the word I was looking for, really. It's the French word, isn't it? Gabion, which is sort of like a tubular basket that was filled with earth and rocks that could sustain even cannonball shots, you know. So it tends to be earthworks made out of things like that during this period. Anyhow, you'll see he hides behind walls to reduce my musketry fire against him. He puts troops in buildings as well, which means that you have to storm them with your bayonet armed troops. And then, of course, once you've done that, you can't use your troops to fire with afterwards. It's a bit of a messy battle. It's all over the place, so there's lots of pausing while I look around to try and find out where his next lot of troops are, where he's moving to, where he's reappeared, and so unfortunately it is quite difficult, like I said, to well, it's quite difficult to narrate the battle. It's also quite difficult to cut it in any way. If I were to sort of speed up bits of the video, some people who are trying to follow the battle might well get lost. So I'm leaving it here in its entirety. Unfortunately, it does mean that not the whole of the battle can be played out in this video, and there will be another couple of minutes going on into the next one as well. So I'm sorry about that, especially when you get sort of like 2/3 of the way through a battle, it stops and you have to wait for the next video to come out. It's going to be a bit frustrating, I'm afraid. There's a 10-minute rule with YouTube, so I can only put 10 minutes of battle on, and I have to stop it at some point in the battle, whether it's approaching the 10 or the 5 minutes or whatever, and there didn't seem to be a good point in the battle where I could just stop it, so I might as well stop it near to the 10-minute point. Give a couple of close-ups there so you can see the troops hiding behind the wall. Those are my troops there. I was hoping by creeping up towards his artillery, you can see that red line, I'm slightly out of range, so I'm not really effective from there. So from that wall I'd hoped to fire onto his artillery. I can't reach, so I'm going to try sneaking up to the other wall, which is just across there. So we're going to leap across from one wall to another, a bit like trench hopping in the First World War, so that I can get a bit closer up to his guns. But one thing that you can rely on with artillery, chevaux de frise on both sides, is that it looks like he's bringing some infantry there onto the flank as well. I've got some men coming over, moving over ahead on the screen now along the wall. He's got some troops coming rather than getting flanked, I'm putting my infantry against them. I'm keeping my infantry that I'm heading for the wall there musket armed, so that I can fire onto that artillery, as I say, and perhaps even onto his cavalry. The other infantry that you can see now going for his flank, they're bayonet armed, so we're going in there. Now that looked like heroic death, which means that my general is involved in the action somewhere. think during the battle I haven't noticed that. I don't know who's approached my general. I should have noticed the heroic death. You can see that sort of orange circle there with a cross in the middle next to the general's head on the display of all my units. That means that, that the general is currently in melee somewhere with someone. I don't seem to be going to check that one out anywhere at the moment. I don't know why. Quite obsessed with sort of like moving forwards and occupying these walls so I can bring some fire to bear on his general and also on his artillery. I was about to say the chevaux de frise works both ways. In other words, if he charges across his own chevaux de frise, then he will sustain the same injuries as I would. Notice, because this is all a bit bitty and we're going for his artillery, he's managing to find a flank there, my right flank, as we come from between these buildings. So, being bayonet armed, we're just going to charge them. There's no time to fire. So we're just rushing in straight away, playing on our advantage of having the bayonet at this point in the game. To be quite frank, I've no idea why I'm so obsessed with hiding behind this wall at this stage. We've taken his artillery in placement, they're running away. His cavalry can't fire back at us, they're non-firing cavalry. So why I've suddenly got this obsession with lining up behind walls I really don't know. I think it's just because it was my original intention to move up, occupy the first wall having got through the village and give fire, but of course he's moved around different buildings and come in on flanks and we're in a bit of a mess now. You might wonder why the building's on fire, by the way. The reason for that is his artillery has fired at it. You don't set buildings on fire by occupying them or defeating the enemy that's inside them. Where's my general now? I'm working out what to do with my general. He doesn't seem to be occupied anymore. I'm just sending them in against his cavalry now. His cavalry has found what looks to be a flanking action there against my infantry, where I was obsessed with the wall, if you remember. So I decided to send my cavalry in against his. Looks like I've been pretty unlucky with the general's troop there. Very few casualties and I've lost the general already. In fact, it looks like he might have been the first to fall. Approaching the end of this video now. I will be saving the other one later today, so I won't have to wait too long for it. Much of the same. I think I do manage to give you a couple of close-ups as well, so you can see the action a little bit more fun on an individual combat basis as well. That's one of the wonderful features of Empire Total War. You can zoom in and you can see the troops actually fighting with their bayonets against troops that haven't got bayonets. So I'll get this one uploaded right now and expect the other one to be in perhaps a couple of hours or so.